It's a day of Bahrain Grand Prix. It's race day, chat. That means we've got to get techier than techie things, because there are very many plotline, narrative and F1 update at which we need to pull on the back of qualifying yesterday. We'll talk about Lando Norris and the negativity in extreme is. So too, we'll talk about Charles Leclerc and Sir Lewis Hamilton and the narrative around Sir Lewis going into race day, how it couldn't even be more negative if you tried to make it. So too, we'll talk about Max, because he had some very choice words to say, pointed at his team, the Bulls that are red. Techier than techie things, Mikhail. Go on, let's talk about Lando in the first instance, because he gave a couple of different interviews and each was more negative than the previous. In the first, he said, you know what, I need to thank my team. When he was asked about the reasons why he was so slow, he did one of these, pointed the finger directly at himself, which is commendable. But he, Lando Norris, some say, is negative and self-deprecating at this point to a fault. I know that Lando historically has said, listen, my personality will work. Ultimately, I can be myself and become a world champion. However, I want to counter Lando. This is a problem in extents and not kinds now. When you're so self-deprecating, so glass half empty, I don't think that translates necessarily to lap time. I think he needs to take himself more seriously with a view to ultimately amend for the mishaps and continuously improve. Sack off how it looks. Sack off the aspect of the thing from the exterior, from the outside. Nobody cares ultimately about that, Lando, because ultimately that stuff doesn't translate to lap time, nor does it translate to points in the driver's standing. Therefore, it doesn't matter, surely. But when I hear Lando say words to this effect, it concerns me, chat. He said, today was a terrible day. I was dreadful. To be fair, I've been struggling all year, to be honest. The car, putting laps in, it's been a struggle to drive. It's been a struggle for me to get lap time out of the car, and I don't have an answer. That's Lando Norris's words 1.0, not mine. And that's concerning, chat. Again, not that he's been negative, not that he's taken accountability, but this is a difference in extents and not kinds now. I would argue, Lando, if continuous improvement is where we're looking to go, if you want to fight for a driver's championship and fend off a fire-breathing dragon in OJ Piastri, so too Maximilian Verstappen, and a young hungry lion in Charles Leclerc, I would argue that this isn't edifying, not this level of truth-saying and negativity. Here's hoping. At this point, Lando, I feel like he's in a quagmire, and I would lack empathy. No, it would be disingenuous of me not to wish for a redemption arc at the Bahrain Grand Prix in a couple of hours for the one that they call Lando Norris. So too, let's talk about Charles Leclerc and Sir Lewis. Brilliant article in the race, courtesy of the God Tier 1 they call Mark Hughes. In there, he talks ad infinitum about Lando Norris's underperformance, his inability to handle what is a mercurial car as far as its instability at the rear, particularly for the high-speed turns, turn 5, 6, 7, turn 11, turn 30. Before we come on to Lewis and Charles, let me say this about Lando. What was concerning is that it wasn't anomalous as far as his underperformance. There wasn't one sector that you could point at, like, say, I don't know, a Japanese Grand Prix. Suzuki was God tier all over. China, you could argue, sector 1, not fantastic. That was where his mistakes were, and that's where he left lap time on the table. Around here, though, there wasn't one mistake, chat. Again, that leaves you concerned, right? If Lando makes a mistake, I don't know, at say turn 1, and then he's on par, if not quicker than Oscar Piastri for the rest of the track, the other two sectors, then that ties with what we know. That Lando Norris was God tier in qualifying last year, 19-3, I want to say, as versus Oscar Piastri, or 20-3 even. That would tie, that would tick and tie. However, Lando Norris was losing time to OJ Piastri all over the track, which leaves me concerned. Maybe this is an issue about pace, not just pace, but Lando's ability to handle and optimise for a very difficult Mercurial MCL39. Speaking of Mercurial and difficult, should we talk about Scuderia Ferrari? Because that car is hard to drive. I think that's the word of the day. Difficult, temperamental, mercurial as far as this rule and reg set and these cars. Ground effect is always going to be a struggle, particularly if you're a 40-year-old 7-time champion. Because why? Well, because people say that it's not the strongest of the species that survives, but the one who's most adaptable to change. Charles Leclerc, as a young, hungry lion, a fire-breathing dragon as an F1 peddler, has adapted to a very mercurial circumstance and or aspect of an SF25. It's bloody understeery in the low minimum speed turns, a la, I don't know, an RB21, and very twitchy in the quick ones, a la every Mercedes iteration over the past 3 years that Lewis Hamilton has been struggling with. Lest we forget, Lewis has said ad infinitum that he needs confidence in the rear so that he can go hard on the brakes into the turn, combined entry settings, and be super aggressive combined exit. In order to do those things, you've got to have a rear that's stable, a semblance of stability. Lewis has been telling us that for the past 24 months, as near as makes no difference. Arrives at Ferrari, and it just so turns out that the handling dynamic of that SF25 mirrors everything that he's been experiencing at Mercedes, the boys and girls at Brackley and Brixworth, for the past 24 months. Oh, the humanity. And it gets worse. Guys have heard me say that I wish I always want for Sir Lewis to fulfill his dream. Red car, yellow badge, black prancing horse atop. Tick, tick, tick. How could he not at this stage, particularly when Mercedes were underperforming? But two things have happened. Outside of his honeymoon period now is where Sir Lewis Hamilton is. Long gone. Distant in the memory of the pictures with him in the black pinstripe suit and the Ferrari F40 in the background. I mean, of course they were iconic, groundbreaking, seminal moments in F1. You'll never see an Instagram post relating to F1 that has more engagement, more likes. That's just how seminal that moment was. Groundbreaking settings, some might say. However, now Ferrari Tifosi, now the Italians are looking at this and saying, well, we've got to deliver upon this now. We need silverware, and Lewis Hamilton is struggling underneath that shadow. There is a pressure expectation doom loop that ensues, making Lewis Hamilton, Sir Lewis, 7-time champion, GOAT setting, making his job more difficult by the second. So too, Charles Leclerc, because he's not doing badly, is he? P2 settings now, listen, the car's not great. Its handling dynamic is a chaos merchant. Again, it's difficult to drive. RB21 all over again. But who's driving it, chat? There's one fella at that team who's nailing it, and he has a name. His name is modern day journalese Charles Leclerc. He's nailing it. Let me read this out to you, because this is important. Charles manages to sow the trajectories better, touching the inside curbs with great precision. However, a slight oversteer emerges in some sections of the track, especially in the release and transition phases. We are talking about an annoyance that to a small extent penalises performance, although in some cases the Monegasque modern day journalese, aka Charles Leclerc driver himself, has managed to exploit this characteristic to his advantage. Therefore, what's Charles Leclerc doing? Fulfilling on his promise, doing his best to continuously improve and meet the demands of his not insubstantial potential. Charles Leclerc is driving around the handling dynamics, the foibles and multitudinous travails of that SF25. No, he's weaponizing them. Where Lewis lost a lot of time, he was god tier going through T1, 2, 3 and 4. However, going into the quick ones, Maggots and Beckett settings, turn 5, 6, 7, medium to high speed, medium duration. That's where Lewis lost all his time. So too, turn 11 and turn 13. quick turns, medium to high speed, medium to long duration each and every single time. That, ladies and gentlemen, in quali is where Lewis is losing his time to shot, and that means something, because this is an extension of the narrative that we saw from Sir Lewis all through last year and the year before then, when George Russell was roundly beating Sir Lewis, 7-time champion, GOAT settings. This means something, therefore. You've got to judge and assess these things in long form, of course, but it's not just 3 races now. It's more than that. This is 27 now, because this form has been extending from Sir Lewis from 2024, chat. You have long form. There is evidence sufficient now to extrapolate some judgments as far as Sir Lewis Hamilton definitively. We prayed, Sir Lewis Hamilton fans all around the world, stands, fundamentalists and extremists, prayed that he would jump into that red car and become a new man, that he would eat some pasta, drink some wine, that he would take off the Clark Kent glasses and become Superman again. Sir Lewis Hamilton of 2018 Singapore, 2007 round the outside on Fernando Plan Alonso. Do you know what I mean? God tier settings. That doesn't look like it's happening though, chat. Not in the real time, particularly as Charles Leclerc is becoming himself. He's becoming Neo. Final form setting Super Saiyan as he weaponises the multitudinous travails of that SF25 car to his own end. You'll recall as a bookend to the Ferrari soliloquy. You'll recall that Lewis said a couple of races ago that he looked at something, a setup that Charles Leclerc had hatched at the Bahrain Grand Prix, but at the Bahrain testing even, but it didn't work for me, Sir Lewis said, and I won't be doing that again. Meaning, therefore, Charles Leclerc has found a way to make the car quick but difficult to handle. Lewis, therefore, is dialing performance out of the car in absolute terms with a view to make it more balanced and drivable. We know they've brought an upgraded floor so that they can run it super low without, again, notwithstanding plankware infringements. But yet and still, Sir Lewis Hamilton struggling. Charles Leclerc now excelling, doing the Maximilian Verstappen thing, for some say soon to be 5-time champion, and outperforming the red car with them their yellow badges and black prancing horse. I'll tell you what else. Maximilian Verstappen, for some say soon to be 5-time champion. Stark contrast. Max Verstappen, it was a celebration of all things Max Verstappen last race weekend, right? The Japanese Grand Prix, Max was able to make the difference. The RB21, the balls that are red, managed to set it up within a window sufficiently close to Lando Norris that Max Verstappen could be the difference. Be the man who Toto, the boy who cried wolf, has been singing praises for the longest time now. You'll recall Toto last year said Red Bull ain't winning any races. Max Verstappen is. That was exactly what we saw. Case in point, even at the Suzuka Grand Prix, Japanese Grand Prix at Suzuka, even last race weekend. God tier through the Degners. God tier into the last chicane, last of the late breakers, and again jumps on the DRS to get that over the line. Pole and the lights to flag victory. Now, however, we're reminded of all the things going on in the background. We're reminded of the fact that Max Verstappen has said he needs 3 things to continue as a Red Bull racing driver: a semblance of harmony, the key players to stay at the team, I don't know, a Wheatley say, or a Fallows say, or an Adrian Newey, let's say, or a Rob Marshall, even, all of whom, by the way, have not long departed from the Bulls that are red. So too, he needs a car capable of winning races and therefore championship. Full stop, new paragraph. And here's why it's damning. Max Verstappen in real time has none of the aforementioned. Max Verstappen is nothing if not a truthsayer. He came out today or post qualifying and said the following: at the moment, I'm not here to fight for the championship. I don't have the tools. I'm here only to take part. Oh, the humanity, Wayne. This is Maximilian Verstappen talking, for some say soon to be 5-time champion. Do you think, therefore, as a non-rhetorical question, my principal supposition in this extemporaneous chat, do you think, therefore, that Max Verstappen is going to stay at a team whose principle, whose raison d'etre is to take part and not win? Absolutely flipping not. Max Verstappen saying at the moment he's only here to take part at the altar of a very understeery RB21, an RB21 that's mercurial in terms of its handling dynamic, an RB21 that simply cannot and will not provide Maximilian Verstappen with the platform requisite to challenge for a championship, to win the fabled consecutive fifth, the thing that Sebastian Vettel didn't manage to get done. Do you think for a second that Maximilian Verstappen is going to stay at that team? Well, if you do think that, I've got property for you, oceanfront property for you to sell in Arizona. This, ladies and gentlemen, the F1 jury, isn't going to happen. I would argue now more than ever, it's a matter of when, not if, on the back of Maximilian Verstappen saying that he's here at the moment only to take part. It's a matter of when, not if, that Max, for some say soon to be 5-time champion, pushes the exit button on the balls that are red. What are we doing here?